So I've been writing just when I have a talk idea or something, in the back of one of my notebooks to just jot down an idea. And this is one of the ones that came to me while we were having some prayer the other day. And I'll give you the title. Might be too long of a title. Do the ends justify the means, or do the means justify the ends? So two different questions. Maybe it's a title and a subtitle. And this is something, and I'll explain it in a second. This is something that was told to me and to us as a class from my English teacher in high school, of all things. That was a little while ago. And I still remember it. He said, do the ends justify the means, or do the means justify the ends? And from time to time, this thought would pop into my mind. And just to explain it a little bit, what it's saying is, should we focus on the outcome of a situation, something we want to happen, a goal, the outcome, and do whatever it takes to make that outcome happen? Or should we focus on simply doing the right thing, the process, regardless of what the outcome is? And I guess this teacher was self-professed member of a religious organization, to take Bruce's terms, a member of some religious organization. And so that's probably where the question came from, although I didn't connect the dots at the time. We know, of course, and you may be thinking to yourself right now, of course, we will do whatever is the right thing to do, regardless of what we believe the outcome will be. That is the right answer. The means justify the ends, so to speak, because the outcome itself, the result of whatever it is, the situation, the thing that we're going after, is not ours. We don't own the result, right? We're not responsible necessarily for the result. We're responsible for following the plan. We're responsible for putting one foot in front of the other, doing what the Lord asked us to do, and trusting in that process, regardless of what we think the outcome may be by doing so. Because the Lord has made promises to us of provision, of healing, of everything else, and He's asked us to trust Him with that outcome, to trust Him with the blessing that will come, the healing that will come, the healed relationships that will come, all of these things. We're told to have faith in His ability to do those things for us. And we'll go over a lot of scriptures talking about that. So the outcome is the Lord's. He is the one. Another talk, I think from Anthony. That's how you pronounce it correctly, Anthony. And Pastor Anthony. Yeah? He had brought out a talk that said, as far as a business goes, there are certain things that are our department, and there are certain things that are the Lord's department. And the results, all of that are the Lord's department, and we have certain things that we need to do in our role. So trust the process. We're not meant to no nudging things in the right direction so that we get the outcome that we want. No shortcuts to sort of, make the outcome we want happen. But simply doing what the right thing is in all cases. And we'll have to go through some illustration and some example, of course, throughout this talk. But that's the principle, right? This very scriptural principle that was sort of put out to us in the form of a question from this high school teacher. So when you think about the world, what do they do? And of course, I'm reading about business and entrepreneurship and all that, and they're most definitely do whatever it takes guys, right? They are most definitely, that's the result I want, that's the goal I want, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get there. That's in business. Some may not operate that way, but that seems to be the norm. Another sector, I guess, that operates that way would be politics, right? And that is do whatever it takes. say whatever you need to say, promise whatever you want to promise, shake hands with the wrong people, the right people, whatever it takes, at least that's my view, not in politics, nor do I desire to be, but that's how I feel it is. So we're looking at this hypothetical question, knowing the answer. Let's dive into some of the things. I'll rattle off just some scriptures in the beginning here that you don't have to turn to. Revelations 22 says, I have planted Apollos. Nope, that's not it. I'm the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. If he's the end, if he's the last, then he's the outcome. He has control of the outcome. He's already designed it. And we're just simply along for the ride, and we can choose to be a part of it, or we can choose to take ourselves out of the blessing and not be a part of it. So there he is. He's the beginning and the end, the first and the last. 1 Corinthians says, I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So one of the examples would be if you're witnessing to people, the goal, the outcome, we want them to get saved. We want them to get baptized. We want them to receive the Spirit. But the outcome of that is not on us. We are simply to open our mouths, to share the good news, to share the warning perhaps first, and then the good news, and to preach the gospel of truth and the words of life. And whether or not they take it is not on us. Now we like to be clever. We like to think that we're smart. We like to think that we, know, maybe we're persuasive. Maybe we know what we're doing. Maybe, whatever it is. And might say, if I nudge this person in this way, or I nudge them in that way, then maybe I can control the result. Of course, we know that ultimately, we can't control any of those things. Maybe if I tell them exactly how to pray and what to do with their mouth, that it will make it happen more easily. No. The Lord's going to make it very clear. And that's our prayer, right? We do what we need to do. The Lord will clarify. That's the whole point of the experience, right? So that's one part. In Isaiah 55, verse 9, he says, "For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." Reminding us to keep our path straight, to keep our actions based on what the Lord has asked us to do, and not try to accomplish it in some other way. So I'm also in marketing and all those kinds of things, but every time I think about what clever marketing things could I leverage in use of preaching the gospel, I'm reminded of these concepts. It's not our cleverness. It's not our way. It's the foolishness of preaching the gospel, the scripture says. The foolishness, one-on-one. I'm just going to go out there, knock on a door, and talk. I can only talk to so many people. What am I going to do that just once a month or once a week? Or am I going to talk? That doesn't seem efficient to me. But it's the foolishness of preaching the gospel, right? And we have to trust in the process. Sometimes, we go out and we think we're very clever, or we've got a new idea or a new spin, and we'll go all in on it. Perhaps expecting to see results from that labor as far as outreaching goes. And then somebody will come to the meeting, but through a different avenue, through nothing that we just did. But it is through what we just did, because what the Lord's asked us to do is preach the gospel. And the Lord's going to bless it, but he's going to sometimes blesses it in a way to show us it wasn't your cleverness. It wasn't what you came up with. It was simply you wanting to serve me, and I blessed you. That's it. Right. And sheep will hear his voice. So the little things like that. I'm going to skip a couple of those because that's getting old now. Let's go to 2 Samuel or 2 Samuel 6. In the Old Testament, for an example of not following the process. An illustration here. So if you're in 2 Samuel 6, starting in verse 3. So David and his crew are ready to take the altar back and carry it back home where it belongs, and get back in the Lord's good graces and do things right. Problem is, they didn't really study perhaps the steps, or keep in mind what the Lord's instructions were, the process that the Lord said, this will be how you do it, regardless of what you think is a good way. So, starting in verse 3, they set the ark of God upon a new cart. So they built a brand new wagon for it. They brought it out of the house of Abinadab that was in Gibeah, and Uzzah and Ahio. Maybe it's Ahio. Maybe we'll do that one. I can never pronounce all these things. And the sons, anyway, drave the new cart. Verse 4, and they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was, why we need to say it again? That's what, accompanying the ark of God, and Ahio went before the ark. In verse 5, and David and all the house of Israel played before the Lord on all manner of instruments made of fir wood, even on harps, on psalteries, and on timbrels, and on cornets, and on cymbals. In verse 6, when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took a hold of it, for the oxen shook it. So we have the Ark of the Covenant, big wooden, thing, on this new wagon that they made, and they're trying to transport it from one area to the other. And the thing to know here was that you don't touch it. You don't put your hand on it, right? So he either didn't know it or decided that he knew better. One of the two. I think he didn't know it, right? They didn't really study. They didn't figure it out yet. So he put his hand up to steady it because it was going to fall. He meant well. Like, we have a goal. That's to get this from point A to point B. We're doing this to serve God. We need to make sure it gets there in one piece. Oh, looks like it's about to fall. I'm going to stop it. Seemed like the right thing to do. But in verse 7, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, or whatever, however we're saying that. And God smote him there for his error, and there he died by the ark of God. In verse 8, and David was displeased because the Lord had made a breach upon Uzzah, and called the name of the place Perazuzah to this day. Seems extreme to us, right? In the natural thing. He meant well, we might say, and we say that to a lot of things. But we've got to be careful. I think this is a highlight and an illustration to us to be careful, that we might mean well to maybe serve the Lord, or to do something that we think is good for the Lord. Like maybe get to the meeting early or on time. But there's too many traffic lights and we left too late. So do we break the law to get there on time? Meaning well in the end, but not following the process, right? Always do the right thing regardless of the outcome. Perhaps the Lord will remove all the traffic from in front of you and make all the lights turn green, or whatever it is. But we always choose the right thing over trying to control what the outcome is. So that's an extreme lesson from the story here, this illustration. Let's turn now to Daniel chapter 3. Some of you instantly know what that will be. To Daniel chapter 3 for a different kind of story. A story of following the process, regardless of what the outcome will be. And in this illustration, the outcome meant death. And so we have the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I've been saying Abednego forever. I probably will again while I'm still talking. So if you're in Daniel chapter 3, in verse 10, there is a bit of reading. We'll try to just get through it. For context, thou, O king, hast made a decree So a rule of law everybody needs to follow, that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, psaltery, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the golden image, the image of the king. Seemed like a natural, fair thing to do. He is the king after all, right? And verse 11, and whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. So if you don't worship this image that the king made, when we tell you, you've done something wrong and you're getting thrown into the furnace, the burning fiery furnace, not just the furnace. They wanted to really bring out that this was not going to be easy to escape or to handle. Verse 12, there are certain Jews whom thou, so somebody's talking to the king, playing a little bit of tattletale here, saying, a king, they're not doing what you said to do, kind of a thing. There are certain Jews, verse 12, whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Which they shouldn't, because God said not to. So they're not. Verse 13, then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Verse 14, Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now, if ye be ready, I'm going to give you one more chance here to see if this is true. Now, if ye be ready, that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, good job. We'll let it go. But if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? So at this point, they have a goal or an outcome that they would like. And I think the outcome that they would like would be to stay alive and to not receive any punishment whatsoever. That's probably what they would prefer, and to continue going about serving the Lord. Now, they could say to themselves, well, I can't preach the gospel maybe if I'm dead, or I can't, their version of Old Testament truth, and I can't be an example for the Lord if I'm not here. Maybe it's not a good testimony to not listen to the authority figure, although we should obey God, not men. So they could have had all kinds of reasoning, perhaps. And certainly when you're faced with something like that, not only am I going to not be alive anymore, but that does not sound like a good way to go, to be cooked alive and have to walk myself into it. I don't think that sounds like a good experience. So verse 16, what did they decide to do, right? How did they go about wanting to achieve the outcome that they no doubt desired? Verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. Careful can also be interchanged with worried, stressed out, having anxiety. We're not concerned here to answer you in this matter. We don't have to be careful with our words. We don't have to think about it. We're going to follow the process, is what they basically said here in verse 17. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. He's able. And he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. So saying this is a possible turn of events. This could be the outcome. I would like it to be the outcome. But then he goes on in verse 18 to say, but if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. They valued doing the right thing over achieving the outcome. They refused to do the wrong thing, regardless of this very threatening outcome. And as we know from this story, the Lord did take care of the outcome. in verse 19. And Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. So let's up the ante, make it even hotter to make sure this gets done. This might have been the first time they were putting somebody in. Just want to make sure it works, I guess. Verse 20, and he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Verse 21, then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. This is probably where my son gets it from, wearing a hoodie in the 90-degree weather in the middle of the Georgia summer. They were bound in all of these things, their hats and everything included. And verse 23, and these men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake and said unto his counselors, did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, true, O king. And he answered and said, lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And from the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. So the Lord took care of that immediate result. They were not harmed. There's this vision here of sorts that the king Nebuchadnezzar had to help him come to his conclusion, which we'll read on verse 26. Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God. So changed his tune almost immediately as the result here, because they had other gods and things that they worshiped. Come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth in the midst of the fire, and the princes, governors, and captains, and king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men, upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was a hair on their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. They didn't even smell like the fire at all. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, this is verse 28, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted him, and have changed the king's word. So it's changing the viewpoint of the world and the outcomes by following the process, by trusting in the Lord and his plan for things. Where was I? And yielded their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own. Verse 29, almost done here. Therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So sort of similar to other stories that we've heard, even sages talk recently about Joseph, trusting the process, trusting the Lord, and the Lord being able to bless that, change the outcome, and all kinds of things. Let's go to Acts 21, if you would. So we had an example of the right way to go about things, the wrong way to go about things. One shows that you're not trusting in the Lord, that you don't have faith in the Lord's process, and one shows that you do. I believe a lot of these things are important for us to keep in mind, because we just never want to be in a position where we think we know better than the Lord. Of course, I always feel like you're preaching to the choir or saying things people already know. But these are reminders to us, right? it's the best for us. It's the best outcome for us to leave things in the Lord's hands instead of our own. If we're in Acts 21, this is about Paul, and this is an illustration of the attitude that he had and that we should have regarding everything we've been talking about here today. So in verse 10, and as we tarried there many days, there came down from Judea a certain prophet named Agabus. And when he was come unto us, he took Paul's girdle and bound his own hands and feet and said, Thus saith the Holy Ghost, so shall the Jews at Jerusalem bind the man that owneth this girdle, being Paul, and shall deliver him to the hands of the Gentiles. So it's just a little warning there from the prophet. This is what's going to happen to you, Paul, if you go and if you preach the gospel to these people. In verse 12, and when we heard these things, both we and they of that place besought him not to go up to Jerusalem. Right? They want control of the outcome. They don't want that outcome that they just heard. So they want to change the outcome. Don't go up to Jerusalem. But the Lord had told him to preach the gospel everywhere, right? The Lord had told him, preach the gospel, and us, preach the gospel to every creature, so on and so forth. So not doing so would have not been following the process. In verse 13, then Paul answered, What meaneth ye to weep and to break mine heart? For I am ready not to be bound only, but also to die at Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Jesus. So the same attitude as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to serve the Lord only, to follow the Lord's plan only, and to be totally and 100% disconnected from the outcome, because the outcome is the Lord's. And if he should be bound, then he should be bound. And if he should die, then he should die and have victory anyway for having faith in the Lord. And it may be a victory like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had, that not only were they not harmed, but it changed all kinds of things and all kinds of circumstances. Or it may just be a victory in that he didn't lose his salvation. He wasn't changed. He wasn't moved, and he stayed steadfast and had a victory to serve the Lord in the end. Okay. All right, just a little bit more, I guess. The last thing I have here regarding the ends justifying the means and so forth is a little bit about our relationships too, and I guess about fellowship as well. And that's probably a whole other talk and a whole other topic, and lots to say about that. But just to touch on some of those things. So a goal and an outcome in this example would be, being in fellowship with brothers and sisters, being united, being able to work together towards a common goal, being able to help each other, being able to love one another, and just be in that fellowship, be in that environment, working together, all those things. That's the goal. That's the outcome that we would want in this scenario. Admittedly, though, that can be challenging. That can be maybe one of the biggest natural challenges that we have, because it involves people. And I think that's all by design too, right? I think the Lord has, orchestrated and advised us to be together, to be united, to be able to do these things, to be as one body and so forth. And to make that happen continually means that there's a lot of overcoming, right? Because again, there's people. I think it's probably one of the challenges that shapes us the most, if we're willing to do the work. And it's just like any other relationship. When you're married, you have a commitment, and you're not going to stop that commitment when you have a disagreement. And you're not going to stop that commitment when you're just not feeling it anymore, or when you don't think the other person's doing for you as they should do for you, right? you are committed to making that work, and you constantly run into challenges and need to overcome them. And as a result, things get better and better and better, sticking with how the Lord has advised you to deal with relationships, which includes brothers and sisters in the Lord and fellowship. In the world, people give up on people. People give up on situations. People walk away. People don't think things can change. People are stubborn. People are self-centered, perhaps. There are a lot of things that we can throw into this bucket. But just like in a marriage, that is a result of commitment and working together and overcoming and growth and all those things, so is the fellowship. And we all know these things. And so we always follow the Lord's processes on that as well, right? We don't cut people off. We don't try to run away from our problems or not talk to someone anymore, or perhaps, just stop seeing someone at the meetings, or stop not going to a fellowship because we don't get along with somebody. We overcome, we press through, we heal everything again, because that's the only way. And we might think that outcome is not achievable through the Lord's processes, but it is. We might think that outcome is just not possible at all, and so I have to move away or something. But it is possible, and it is what the Lord's instructed us to do. Okay, that was the final thought on that. I'll just read through a couple more of these to finish up, just the short scriptures. Where did I get to before? The Lord has provided us with the way over and over again. He says in the scriptures about sticking to his plan, about trusting him with everything. And some examples in Psalm 119, thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And when I picture a lamp, I picture you can see your next few steps. You can see maybe a few yards in front of you, but it's not daytime, right? We're talking about a lamp. You can't see the forest for the trees. You can't see way into the distance. You can't see way into the future. And so it's more of a walking by faith. It's not, I need to get there, and so I'm going to conjure a way in my own strength and in my own resources to achieve that. Instead, these are the steps you need to take right now. Take them. And that's it. So a lamp unto my feet. Similarly, the scripture says in 1 Corinthians, for we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know even as I am known. We don't get the whole picture, right? So why should we be directing the show? Why should we be relying on our cleverness? Why should we think that we can control the outcome? It doesn't make any sense to us. Sometimes we think the Lord's way is too much of a burden to bear, or I can't do it that way. I can't do what he's asking. It's too much for me. Also not true. The scripture tells us it's not true at all. But here in Matthew 11, verse 28, it says, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden with doing things your own way, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. So sharing the burden with the Lord, he's saying, come share this burden with me. And he said, and learn of me, for I am meek, and meek is not weak. Meek is controlled strength. For I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. He does the heavy lifting. He does the work. He wants us to be there with him. He wants us to trust him. He wants us to give him that control. And I'll just leave it there. Yeah.